Wizards of the Coast has just announced a somewhat confusing subset of cards that will be coming along with Innistrad Midnight Hunt. These cards will be Commander legal, not Standard legal. However, they will not be appearing inside of the Midnight Hunt Commander decks. These cards will only be available inside of set boosters and collector boosters. They will not be available in draft boosters.
The Magic Historian.
Greetings! Owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends, I hope the day finds you well, because we are here to talk about a combination of new Magic cards and a bit of bafflement mixed together, all right? Because we have a strange new beast in terms of Magic cards. The Commander legal but not Standard legal cards that show up inside of regular style boosters but don't appear in the actual Commander product for that set. Up until this point, anytime we had Commander cards that were aligned with a new set release, they all appeared in the Commander decks, and you had a chance of getting them inside of collector boosters. So the collector boosters would have one slot that was dedicated to giving you cards that existed in those Commander decks. So there was still a way to get them outside of the Commander product. Now, they've kind of reversed the concept where these slots in these booster packs can now have Commander cards, but it's literally the only place to get them. You can't get them in Commander decks. So it is a bit of a head scratcher. I'll admit, it took me a little bit of time to kind of parse it out. But understand that all the cards that we're going to look at in today's videos will not show up in any of the Commander decks. So if you're excited about them and thinking, I'm going to figure out which Commander deck they're going to get it, you can't get it that way. They will show up in set boosters and collector boosters only, not even in draft boosters. So essentially going forwards, you can only expect draft boosters to have purely standard cards in them. Now, one out of every set booster up until this point used to include list cards and still do include list cards. So there is the situation where you could get a set booster with a card that wasn't a standard card, but they usually stood out and had a specific symbol on them to let you know, the Planeswalker symbol, all that stuff to make them feel different. In this case, if you cracked one of these out of a set booster or collector booster, you could be forgiven for thinking, oh, this is clearly from the Commander deck. It even says down here, like, MIC. It's gotta be Midnight Hunt Commander decks. But nope, these are singularly unique cards that exist only in set and collector boosters. So hopefully I've drilled that point home a bit. Like I said, it was hard for me to wrap my head around it, but let us dive in and take a look at these unique cards. We're going to start out with Avacyn's Memorial. This is 3 white and 5, 8 mana. It's a lot of mana. For a legendary artifact with Indestructible. It has other legendary permanents you control have Indestructible, which is obviously going to be attractive if you're playing Commander, right? Having your Commander or Commanders, if you're playing Partner, you know, having them Indestructible is going to feel pretty good. The flavor text says they had no marble, so the faithful repaired her likeness with wood, straw, twine, and clay. I do like that because it really does convey the concept of a world that has been left in a ruinous state, right? And Avacyn was this symbol of hope for the people of Innistrad, because Avacyn was actually created by the Planeswalker Sorin to look over the plane of Innistrad and make sure that vampires and werewolves didn't overrun mankind. And now we're at the point where Avacyn no longer exists. Sorin had to unmake her. And so there is really no savior for the human peoples of the plane of Innistrad. So the idea of having this sort of memorial to who used to be a beacon of hope makes perfect sense. I have to admit, the card doesn't feel super powerful. I'm expecting that as time progresses and Wizards moves further down this road, they'll probably make more powerful Commander cards only, but for two different reasons I can think they've kind of dialed the power level back. One is they don't want to create an uproar where people are getting upset that they can't get these in Commander decks. And two, why not slow roll the power levels so they can do this for a longer period of time? Because at the end of the day, people's Commander decks tend to feel more static and have fewer changes in them than standard decks. So, you know, I kind of get the feeling that they've made these cards less powerful as their first foray into this concept. But ultimately, if you're somebody who really likes playing with legendary permanents, because this isn't just legendary creatures, this will make your legendary artifacts, legendary enchantments, all that stuff will be indestructible, which is pretty sweet, actually, if you think about the craziness that you can get into. In Standard, this would feel too expensive to get you anywhere. You're kidding me? I got to pay 8 mana, and all it is an indestructible artifact that makes my legendary guys indestructible? I'll pass on that, right? But from a commander perspective, getting to 8 mana isn't nearly as difficult. And I love the artwork, man. This statue, this memorial looks great. You've got this beam of light that is illuminating her statue as she is in this like hopeful kind of pose, but all around her is absolute rubble, showing that ultimately what she stood to protect has been thrown down. So it's got a sorrowful kind of vibe to it. You've got the light illuminating her, but behind her is all this gloomy darkness. I dig it. Now, let's move on. We've got Curse of Obsession with a very telltale heart kind of vibe to it. So you got 1 red and 4 for an enchantment or a curse. You enchant a player with this. At the beginning of enchanted player's draw step, that player draws 2 additional cards. At the beginning of enchanted player's end step, that player discards their hand. So it's a power drawback kind of thing where you do get to draw 3 times as many cards as normal, but at the end of the turn your brain is just emptied by this obsession that you have. So it's like, if you can use the cards every turn, then it's amazing. If you're just emptying your hand, or if you're playing a deck that naturally wants to have an empty hand, then this is a great enchantment, right? The flavor text says he ripped up board after board until his hands were bloody. Still, he could not find whatever it was he sought. So, this concept is tying in to an old story that you may or may not be familiar with about somebody who gets into some nefarious deeds, and essentially he can basically start to lose his mind and hear this heartbeat emanating from under the floorboards. It's just bum 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 bum, and it's just eating away at his mind until he starts to tear up the floor, right? Like it's a very direct concept. But even if you don't know the story, the artwork does give you a somewhat obsessive vibe, right? You've got the look of somebody who's tearing up the floor using this hammer, and it's like you've basically come in and caught them. From this perspective, you're the individual who's walked in and they just seem, you know what I mean? They turn around, they've got that hunched over, sort of surprised, but also kind of feral look to them, right? They've got all the lights around the hole, and you come in and it's like, what have you done, dude? What have you done to your home? This place looks awful, and you're just tearing up the floorboards. What is even going on here? You know, it's definitely got some nice flavor that lends to like humans losing their minds in the current state of Innistrad, where werewolves and vampires can prey upon them without there being any genuine protector to help them out. And this is a card that feels like it's got a certain level of power, but doesn't feel overpowered, at least to me. I mean, admittedly, I haven't played a ton of Commander, so my Commander assessment capabilities maybe aren't the hottest. But either way, this to me seems like a card that is all right, but not too crazy powerful. Now, we're going to take a look at the Vision cycle. So this is a cycle that goes across all 5 colors. They are all flashback cards that follow the same kind of concept. So the first one we're looking at here is Visions of Ruin. This is 1 red and 3 for a sorcery that says each opponent sacrifices an artifact. For each artifact sacrificed this way, you create a treasure token. And I have to admit, on the surface of it, 4 mana to make each of your opponents sacrifice an artifact. I mean, you're probably going to hit multiple cards with it because Commander does have a lot of artifacts that people play, and there are certain auto includes like Arcane Signet or Soul Ring that you know you're just going to see, right? So there's usually going to be cards you hit with it. This isn't going to be a card that is blanked out, but I just feel like 4 mana for that effect is somewhat underwhelming, but at the same time, it does have flashback, which means you're going to get to use it twice. And while the flashback cost does look huge when you look at it and go, whoa, it's got a flashback of 10, its flashback cost does have a reduction measure where it says this spell costs S. That's the new variable for Magic, S. This spell costs X. X gonna give it to you. This spell costs X less mana to cast this way, where X is the greatest mana value of a commander you own on the battlefield or in the command zone. So if your commander has a converted mana cost, or as the kids say these days, mana value of 5, then all of a sudden it only costs 5 to flashback. So if you have a big expensive commander, this could actually just flashback for 2, although I don't think there's a ton of people running commanders that have a casting cost of 8, right? But whatever, either way, the point is you can flash this back. So you do get 2 iterations out of it, and I like the way it's represented in the artwork with 2 different visions of ruin, right? You can see the first one is this werewolf, and it is just running around while everything has been set aflame. And it looks like some sort of artifact has been destroyed, some kind of perhaps statue that's in front of the werewolf that it's leaping towards. Now, all of these visions cards have like a reflection concept going on, and I like the fact that you think maybe after the first time you do this, when you flash it back, maybe there's not as many artifacts to go around. So in the first instance of it, you can see this werewolf ripping around, destroying everything. And in the second one, the flames are still lifted up while he's kind of looking around. He's like, any more artifacts to smash? That's the vibe it gives me. And I love the sort of like frenetic energy of the top part of the artwork where he's in mid-charge, and in the second it's somewhat calmer. I mean, the flames are still rising up around it, but you can see that it does have kind of a contrary vibe. And I like the fact that the reflection is shown on something that could easily be considered an artifact as well. I really dig the art concept for this vision cycle. Let's take a look at the next card. That's Visions of Glory. So Visions of Glory is 1 white and 4 for a sorcery that allows you to create a 1/1 white human creature token for each creature you control. This one feels like it has a lot of potential depending on the size of your army. Like, I play a Hazazon Tamar commander deck, and this actually is a card that would fit very well into it because my deck makes a ton of token creatures. So one that just goes, boom, double all your creatures essentially, I'm down for that. And this has flashback, again, for like 10, but it's white aligned this time, so you can do it again. So basically you can quadruple the amount of creatures out. If you had 10 creatures out, you could play this, boom, now you've got 20 creatures. Play it again, boom, now you've got 40 creatures. This one to me is a more impressive effect than the artifact sacrificing red one we just saw, right? Like, this one has genuine potential. And the artwork shows this individual charging into battle, but then the glory, the visions of glory are actually reflected on his shield, where you can see there are obviously 3 individuals, as if this spell had been cast and flashback. You start with 1 guy, and then you cast it again. Oh, wait, no, never mind, because that would end up with 4. I'm off in that case. Originally, I was like, oh, 3, like the original one, plus and flashback. But nope, that doesn't work out. Either way, you can see that the amount of soldiers has increased, and I like as well that the 1 soldier is shown set against this dark, cloudy sky. But the reflections, the vision of glory, is actually shown with a bright sky and multiple people charging forward. So this really works as a concept and a card for me. Now, black is Visions of Dread, which is a great name. 1 black and 2 for a sorcery. Target opponent puts a creature card of their choice from their graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. This feels really good. Like, ultimately, depending on when you get it in the game, if your opponent has a ton of creatures in the graveyard, they're going to give you some probably jank bag, small creature, who cares, doesn't matter, right? But If it's played earlier or when your opponent only has one or two choices in their graveyard, and they're amazing choices, the power level of this card ramps right up. Getting to do this, getting to animate a creature from your opponent's graveyard for 3 mana is pretty solid. Obviously balanced out by them getting to choose. And getting to do it twice with the flashback, maybe choosing 2 different opponents, that is also great. And I love the artwork on this card so much. On the top, we have somebody who is in some kind of swampland wading into a fetid pool alone. They're by themselves, right? And you can see the reflection of them. It is some kind of undead being, or perhaps a ghoul caller, who knows, right? But they're not alone. Reflected in the water, you can see that they are followed by 2 zombies, right? They've got the 2 undead in the background. And this one, unlike the one we just looked at, totally does work when you think about it being cast. You've got you as the main figure here walking out into the water. And then behind you, you have the first and second creatures you get from casting this and then flashing it back. The flavor on this card is absolutely perfect. Everything about this card screams yes to me. The name is great, the artwork is great, and the artwork and name tie together so well with the concept of the card. So in terms of card design, this is A+. I love it. Moving on, we've got Visions of Duplicity. 1 blue and 2 for a sorcery. Exchange control of 2 target creatures you don't control. And then it's got flashback for 10, and it's blue aligned. So this one, I mean, it allows you to mess around and be duplicitous. And here, you know what, I'm going to take this creature and swap it around. But ultimately, I don't like the idea of exchanging / theft style cards that just affect other people. I mean, it's great, I guess, if you really like to get into politicking in Commander and being like, yo, if you will do this, I will literally give you his best guy and give him a jank guy. So from that perspective, if you're somebody who likes that style of play, then sure, I could see you appreciating it, right? I mean, for me, the 2 people shown in this artwork look too similar to really give the concept of 2 creatures being swapped. It really does look like it's like somebody escaping from a mirror, right? So this doesn't like track for me from the perspective of a flavor concept. I don't know if maybe this artwork was originally meant to be used for some kind of like evil twin coming out of a mirror or something. I'm not 100%. I just know that, yes, you could say that the guy who's turned around with his, like, it's just the hat, the garment, it's the same guy in the artwork. So this doesn't look like you're exchanging copy of 2, like you're not exchanging 2 creatures. This looks like copy magic to me, right? Or like maybe like an evil copy of you escaped from a mirror while the regular copy got trapped inside, and that's why the one inside has just been put inside and they're kind of downcast, where this evil one's like, yeah, and he's just escaped from the mirror. Like, I really like this artwork. It's very evocative. I like conceptually, it's sweet, but ultimately in terms of the way it ties together for flavor, I don't like it. And ultimately for the ability as well, I don't like it, because I'm not huge into the whole negotiating and messing around with other people in Commander style of playing. So this just doesn't fit into my style of play. But that doesn't mean I don't like the card. Ultimately, I just wish they had made some changes to the artwork to make it feel like you're actually exchanging control of 2 creatures that you don't control, because this is definitely not how that feels to me. But anyways, I'm just going to repeat myself if I keep going. Let us move on to my favorite color, green. Visions of Dominance. I shall dominate you all! Visions of Dominance is 1 green and 2 for a sorcery that says, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, then double the number of +1/+1 counters on it. So on the surface, when you first look at it, you go, okay, all right, 3 mana, I cast this on a creature, it's going to get +2/+2 if it has no other bonuses. Clearly, if you're playing with creatures that already have +1/+1 counters, it's ratcheted up. But I like to look at cards like this just from the angle of, what if you use this on a regular creature? So if you use this on a regular everyday creature, it's just going to give +2/+2. However, it also has flashback, which changes the math considerably because you've put 2 counters on it from the first iteration, but then you cast it again, boom, you bump up to 3 counters, you double that, now you're up to 6 counters. And +6/+6 is enough to make virtually any creature in the game pretty intimidating, right? And I like the way that that's conveyed with the artwork, where you have this little frog, and he's out on a lily pad. Like, the top of the artwork is actually a nice little nature vista. Like, check it out. I'm just hopping around on the lily pads. I'm just a little 1/1 frog boy, just living my life. But he's staring down into the waters. And in the waters, the visions of his dominating form, the frog that's become a 6/6, or it'd be a 7/7 if this was a 1/1 frog that had 2 applications of visions of dominance applied to it. It would be a 7/7. The equivalent of elder dragons, big enough to take on gods, depending on the world that they come from. Like, that is amazing. And its reflection is shown as a giant hulking beast, right? And there's an arm hanging out of its mouth, and it's got these vicious teeth. It's got a very, like, get rocked kind of vibe to it, right? And also, I like the fact that the menacing nature of it is enhanced by the fact that in the background, all the trees behind it feel lifeless, right? On the top, you've got a very nice naturey vibe. Oh, we're all happy and friendly. At the bottom, the only thing that's alive in this picture that's showing actual signs of life is this gigantic toad monster with an arm hanging out of its mouth. All the trees are barren and gray and maybe even dried out. So it just adds an extra level of intensity to the danger. That's how it feels to me, at least. Anyhow, that covers all of these specifically unique cards. Again, can't get them in commander decks. They're only in set or collector boosters. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, because YouTube will go, good job, buddy, and treat my video better because you did that. If you love what I'm doing, become a patron, join my Patreon. A big thank you to all my patrons for supporting my channel, and I will see you all, my friends, tomorrow for more Innistrad Midnight Hunt goodness.